The United States, seemingly waning in influence in the Middle East, has regained strength. All eyes are suddenly on the US once again as it addresses the Israel-Gaza conflict. Yet Egypt and Saudi Arabia are notably displeased with the US, and they didn't bother to express their displeasure in broad daylight. Hello and welcome, I'm your host Piyush. Let's begin with the video report. In the ongoing Israel-Gaza conflict, Israeli authorities reported over 1,400 deaths and 3,400 injuries in Israel due to attacks by Hamas, which began on October 7th. In retaliation, Israeli forces launched airstrikes on Gaza after Hamas infiltrated Israel, abducting children and women. Gaza has seen 3,478 deaths and over 12,000 injuries, as per the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Tensions rise as Israel contemplates a ground war in Gaza. The situation in the Middle East continues to worsen daily, with a looming crisis of big war and a massive migrant crisis. The Middle East is ablaze with heightened tensions as Iran and Lebanon issue warnings about new battlefronts against Israel. Amidst this turmoil, the United States has made a significant entrance. President Joe Biden's visit to Israel on October 18th, while seemingly routine, remained on global attention. However, his planned meeting in Lebanon was abruptly cancelled by Lebanese officials who claimed the US couldn't halt the ongoing conflict. The motives behind this cancellation remains unclear. Prior to this, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to Egypt and Saudi Arabia also faced similar challenges. Blinken, like Biden, encountered unexpected setbacks and embarrassments during his diplomatic efforts in the region. But yes, his embarrassment was kind of more tense. In the recent diplomatic efforts concerning the Israel-Hamas conflict, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken encountered substantial challenges, notably from influential figures in the Arab world. His attempts to persuade Egypt's Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to align with the US stance faced strong opposition. In Riyadh, Blinken experienced significant delays, with the Saudi Crown Prince arriving the following morning for their meeting. During the meeting, Prince Mohammed emphasized the US must halt the military operations that had resulted in civilian casualties, referencing both Hamas's actions and Israel's counteroffensive, and called for a peace deal to be struck soon. This contradicted US policy, which supported Israel's aim to eradicate Hamas. The situation became even more complex with Egypt. Despite US officials announcing an agreement for a temporary opening at the Rafah border between Gaza and Egypt for Palestinian Americans fleeing the violence, this arrangement fell apart. Palestinian Americans rushed to the border, but Egypt closed its border at the last moment, preventing their escape. Tensions escalated further during exchanges between Blinken and el-Sisi. While Blinken contended that Israel was being oppressed, Egypt argued that this was a facade, alleging orchestrated events. According to Egypt, the US wanted the Middle East to bear the chaos's cost despite its own role in escalating tensions in the region. It's almost as if it is 2022 all over again. Even last year, Blinken suffered snubs while dealing with OPEC nations. However, this recent snubbing of US Secretary of State Antony Blinken by al-Sisi and MBS might be less about diplomatic protocol and more about suspicion. The prevailing view: the US has a hand in chaos. Considering recent events, their skepticism isn't entirely unfounded. Egypt and Saudi Arabia had been cozying up to Israel thanks to Abraham Accords until Gaza's actions threw a wrench into the works. There is a very curious coincidence emerging. Just as chaos erupted, the US generously gifted $6 billion to Iran, which has been allegedly aiding Gaza via indirect means. Furthermore, US weapons intended for Ukraine curiously found their way to Gaza, further muddying the waters. Now the US is playing both sides, sending war assistance to Ukraine while also calling to provide humanitarian aid to Gaza. It's a plot twist that fuels suspicions. Was the US behind this explosion of chaos? MBS and al-Sisi seem to think so, explaining Blinken's humiliation. The US, it appears, has been gaslighting the war in Israel, clandestinely aiding both sides. Even Netanyahu, no stranger to political intrigue, might be aware, explaining the lack of camaraderie seen between Biden and Netanyahu, unlike the chummy relationship with Trump.